So today we want to talk about anatomy of a license. This is while this is useful and for the business people and the legal experts to understand and play with, but how the negotiations, how the commercial revenue will flow from them to the licensees to licensors. And then there are a number of people with whom typically licensees have to deal. We don't have to deal as licensors, but what we will do is we put certain clauses to ensure that whatever they do, they keep us informed and they do it within the uh, legal boundaries, and they do not harm uh, our interests for the transaction. Now, it is important to have these identification in place because it ensures enforceability. For example, tomorrow that particular company did not commercialize, or they were cheating for some reason, and we want to take a legal action against them. And if we have not identified the right people, we'll not be able to establish anything. So a lot of due diligence has to go, accountability has to be fixed, and ownership rights have to be affixed. So for that also you need to have all these documentation in place, even for the licensor side. For example, if your university is the owner but the inventors have signed a licensing agreement, then the ownership right actually doesn't exist with your inventors. So you need to have a ownership transfer rights with the university, and university should sign with the company. So you have to ascertain who is the parties involved and whether they have the legal rights to do so. This is a generic slide. Basically, we know what are the advantage and value exchange. Licensors, they get the technology out in the market, they get revenue generated, they retain the IP ownership when we are talking about licensing, but they are able to generate value as well as they are able to get the technology out as a product form. Licensees, they don't have to do everything from scratch. They are taking a technology which is validated, they are doing a production, maybe product development and production, and then going out in the market to make money. So they have a reduced risk of technology development also, and they get access to innovation, as well as they, if there is some new technology coming up, they have competitive advantage also, because others will still have to work it out, while the licensor licensee arrangement in this case will accelerate the growth of licensees to take it to the market. Now, this was a general understanding, overarching understanding. Now I want to narrow it down to the licensing agreement. Now, how it looks. There are at least three phases and one kind of preparatory phase. First phase is your foundation, where in the agreement you have to define a lot of terminologies so that there is no ambiguity in what you are understanding, what I am understanding. For example, your the definition of net sales, or definition of a licensed product, what it means. Does licensed product, the license, the technology that I have developed, anything that comes out as a product from this can be licensed product? Let's say we have defined like this. What about the developments? What about the modifications? The technology which we are giving as it is may not be become a product. So we have to define what does this licensed product means. So there are multiple things like this. So you have to put all the definition in place, define it as per mutual understanding. There are standard clause that you can also use. You have to define the business purpose. For example, if you say the purpose of this product development or commercialization is only B2B or B2G, but somebody started working on retails, right? You don't want to do that. If that is the understanding, then you define it properly. Otherwise, later on, after the product is in the market, there will be dispute. So the purpose of definition is to align the understanding and avoid any kind of conflict. And then you have the basics of opening the agreement, how it is opened, how it is drafted, and then what are the core principles. For example, grant, territory, in which area you want to commercialize, what time period, within which time period you want to commercialize, whether it is an exclusive license or non-exclusive license. Are there certain criteria? For example, if the technology is not commercialized between 2 years or 3 years, we will have to renegotiate, because perhaps they are not able to take it forward. So are you putting all those clauses together or not? These are the foundation of your license agreement. Then you go to the architecture. like how you want to give the rights, what kind of rights you want to give, what are the activities or deliverables that person has to do, what are the retained rights, what I am going to retain with me. For example, the background IP, the IP that I have, I am the owner, so I want to develop more on this. So those rights are retained or not. Sometimes we license it, and the licensee will come back saying that you have licensed it to me, and you can't do a product development on that. So we have to be careful about all of this when we are drafting our agreement. And then, of course, the royalty and financial arrangement. All of this we will detail. Then we'll look into the execution part. For example, the company have to take this technology into, let's say, scale up, let's say validation, let's say they have to do certain modifications as per regulatory. So all those milestones have to be execution part of the product development part, or scaling up part on marketing part. All those parts have to be also defined and put in the agreement property. What are the due diligence that is required? For example, sometimes you can have a committee, steering committee you can form, so that every quarter you see where the product has moved. You When the product is commercialized, you put certain auditing rights, you put the reporting mechanism, all those things you put as a due diligence, so that the action of the development of the product actually moves forward. Of course, the ownership right, you define what happens to the old IP, the IP that you have given, the IP that is generated independent of each other. It is also possible that you continue to work without their help and you come out with a new IP, right? So what happens to that? What happens if they are working independently and they also come out with some other IP? What happens if both of you are working together and some new IP comes out? So all those things have to be ascertained clearly. And of course, who will take up the cost? The entire management thing. If somebody sues you or me, then how do we go about it? How we'll protect it? Once we have all these framework ready, and typically you can do it a standard agreement or template or term sheet ready with this, then you do minor tweaks, and based on negotiation you can change things. But these are essential anatomy of your license deal that will define the transaction, that will make technology development and transaction part a success. It will not be a mere paper or a mere relationship with the company. It will be a solid foundational work which will lead to a productization and commercialization. And once you start drafting, you have to take care of certain things. For example, termination clause. If the deal does not happen, or if the product development commercial doesn't happen, how do you deal with it? What will happen to IP? How it will come back? The common pitfalls of IP ownership. uh, Drafting, how it is done, which things are there any inconsistency, or those things you have to take care of. And of course, at the with the negotiation, you do all those tweaking. So this is the framework of how it looks. I'll go a little bit faster, but I'll then talk about the individual parts also, and it will be much more clear. I'll show you one template also, so that what I'm talking, you can actually take a reference of that. So the preamble and definition, it identifies the people, the parties, the purposes, the commercial intent, the royalties upfront and everything, and ownership rights are defined, relationships are defined. And that's why it is important to put preamble. I'll show the preamble part. And then you define all of this: license technology, confidential information, net sales, territory, improvements, effective date, documentation, IP rights. So basically, for example, effective date, right? We get confused between effective date and date of signings. We have to define. We can't leave it open that effective date is something and signing date is something, and then we are not sure, which one date is the date of the agreement. You can define effective date as the date of last signatory. The person who signed last could be your effective date, or you can put that the 1st of January 2027 is my effective date. So you define it very clearly so that there is no ambiguity. And similarly, for example, improvements. What happens to improvement? A lot of time improvement become the part of the IPR itself, and you can define if improvement becomes a separate IP. Sorry, if we can file a separate patent on the improvement, then the improvement will not be categorized as the same IP transaction that has happened. So you can define it like that, right? And for a lot of these, there are standard clause, and these standard clause you can follow. That becomes very easy for definition. I'll move to the next. So the important part then comes to what are the scope of the grant. Here this one becomes a little bit typical. We think only that we are either giving exclusive license or non-exclusive license, but then we do not define it properly, and we lose out on a lot of things. For example, when I say time definition, right? The non-exclusive, and if it is written for a particular term period in a particular territory. If a territory is not mentioned, then the person will go and they can actually claim that we can commercialize anywhere in the world. But actually, you only meant territory as India, right? So you have to define territory as India and take care of this particular thing in your grant, in the language of the grant itself. What are the use cases, right? Like the field of use. The field of use can also be divided into multiple sectors. Whether you are saying this particular technology can only be used for as a therapeutics, for example, or it can only be used as prophylactic. You have defined a use case. If you give a particular API, any molecule, to another company without defining this, they can actually use in any of this. But your technology particularly is only for one, and you have not explored the other area. And maybe tomorrow some big company comes and wants to explore that, then you will lose out on that opportunity. So the scope of the license grant has to be understood from the use case, from the nature itself, the commercial rights that you are giving. Are you giving it for profit purpose or not for profit purpose, or even for the profit purpose within what geographical restriction and limitations? Whether are you giving certain know-how associated with it, source code, your could be biological material. What are the things that you are giving on top of the IP, right? All those things have to be mentioned properly in this. So, and then you address all the questions that are mentioned. What happens to the modification? What can it be given to a third party, licensing, sub licensing, with geographies? All those things can be defined. Now, then once we understand the scope, then we can categorize into certain areas. There could be exclusive license, and exclusive, non-exclusive, typically we all understand well. Exclusive is when we are giving it to only one party, and there we do some certain assessment to understand it's a strategic partnership, whether this person can act, this company can do full justice to the commercialization, or we want to give it to multiple small stakeholders who can maximize our commercial potential, right? And so there are also depends on technology also. For example, it is software, then it makes sense to give it to multiple parties. If it is a deep tech technology, perhaps the company who's coming to you wants an exclusive license. So in some cases you want to be smart in how you want to design it, and based on whether you are giving an exclusive license or non-exclusive license, you will accordingly put the royalty structure and upfront amount. I will talk about that subsequently. Other way is sole license. Sole license is when, for example, you are a startup or a spin out, or even, for example, you are an individual inventor. You want to give it a company, but at the same time, you want to continue doing it yourself also. For example, you are producing certain material, like maybe it is a magnetic material, some new alloy you have created. You are giving it to the company who only wants to use for, let's say, motors. But if you can create these materials, you can sell it to some other industries also, which these parties are not interested. So you can also negotiate a sole license where they can do commercialization, you can also do a commercialization. This can also be divided when you want to do a field of use license. So you can tell them you can only use in motors, and I can give it to others, or I can do it to myself for any other field of use. And in telecom sector and semiconductors, you do also cross licensing, where a lot of portfolio is held by one company and the other set of portfolio is held by another company, they often cross license their technologies to each other so that both of them can come out with new products and cutting edge products. Field of use license, accordingly, I have told you, mostly it is based on the applications. So for example, one technology has 5 different application. I can give one field of use license to one company, another one to another company. It could be exclusive or it could be non-exclusive. It can be both ways. Or you can give entire technology to one company who has capacity of sub licensing perhaps to different small companies. So these are different ways in which you can design your licensing. And then, I mean, I've talked about this earlier. There are different kinds of structured licensing agreements, software agreements, patents, trademark, know-how, and the software and AI and data licensings are also coming. These are a lot of trained data or data sets that you are also licensing. So that you can do licensing of these as well, and the basic principle remains same for everything. Now coming to the commercial part, one of the important factor is how are we designing in the licensing agreement, and this is where the companies will negotiate with you a lot, because this is where all the uh, money and revenue is for them, and that is why they came to you, so that they can take the technology, sell it out, and make money and return money to you. So it they consider a lot of factors while designing it. We also have to consider a lot of factors in designing it. The technology valuation is, or IP valuation is, one of the critical factors. We have to place our technology at appropriately right amount. A lot of times we undervalue our technology. It does nothing but it undercuts our own value in technology, as well as we suffer the lost opportunity to make appropriate amount from the hard work as an inventor we do. On the other hand, the companies have to take up a lot of cost. For example, they have to take up the cost of scaling up product development, setting up the manufacturing or customizing their manufacturing unit, marketing, sales, and in between they have to pay a lot of market channel they have to pay and set up all those structures, the freight cost, everything is their headache. So they, while they sell and the money that they make from market, they have to account for all these monies that go away at different places, and then they have to look at their margin, and from that margin they have to give to the technology originator. So all of this is a little bit difficult. I'm not going into the details of valuation, but let's say we get a valuation amount fixed, that this particular technology can be given in 15 lakh rupees. I'm just putting a random number. We can license it in 15. The value of this technology is, let's say, 15 lakh rupees, and there is some royalty amount. Now, this amount, that is how we want to distribute it, is the matter of how we want to present it to the company and how they are also expecting. A lot of times we want to gain a lot from the upfront. We want to give a lot of money, we want to take a lot of money and let them do whatever they want with the technology. Of course, it is licensing, so they have to keep reporting to us, but we are interested in the technology cost that we have put in developing the technology to be recovered upfront. That's possible. And sometimes the companies say that this is too much for us because we also have to bear a lot of cost. Can we spread it out? Then you put this upfront and milestone hybrid model, where you have from 15 lakh, perhaps you sign 5 lakh as upfront and divide the rest 10 lakhs into 2 or 3 or 4 tranches, where as milestone progresses, for example, first milestone could be your successful product development as per the specification, market specification. Second one could be successful manufacturing, first batch manufacturing. Next could be market approval or whatever paperwork that they have to do. Fourth could be your first commercial sales. So you can design all these milestones based on how what it takes the company to start from technology stage to market stage. And this helps the company also gain more confidence that technology is getting de-risked when it is moving closer to market. It gives you also confidence that every time success is achieved, I am getting the money that the technology is valued at. If, for example, because we know that technology development may not always scale up, we at lab it was working fantastically, but next level it did not work, right? The company who have paid everything upfront will not be happy. If it works, you will be happy that perhaps it is going in the right direction. But if it does not work, then you will not end up with a better relation with a company partner. You can go back and work with them to optimize, to make it work, to take it forward. That's how we have to see a product to be to move ahead, because there are a number of iterations that will happen. How do you design these upfront milestone is a matter of negotiation. You can do that. Typically upfront payment, you should keep these as upfront non-refundable amount, so that your technology cost is ensured. After that, milestone payment, because once the milestone will be achieved, then only that money will come. So at least the upfront payment you should keep as not non-refundable. Then at the once the commercialization starts, you can fix a royalty percentage. Now, how to come about this royalty percentage? You can find some global trends, royalty rates for your particular technology. For every technology it is different. For example, for medical devices, it could be anywhere between 3% to 8%. For pharmaceuticals, it could be anywhere between 1% to 5% perhaps. So these are kind of acceptable terms that you can take it up. And the end goal of designing all of this is to get a predictable revenue. It's not that everything upfront, all the upfront is gained by one party and the other party is not making any money from royalty. So the idea is that however we design, we need to get money out of each of the bucket. If we take upfront money, we should also think about how we will help them so that they can commercialize and get the royalty money as well, right? So we design it like this, and we work as a team when this happens. So then you have the revenue that will come to you in regular interval and in a predictable manner. The product will come out in the market, and risk will be shared. One party should not take entire risk. For example, if I am giving a technology, it should not happen that I am not taking anything upfront. I am saying, okay, you take it and you give it, you commercialize it and give me royalty. That is also a big risk. I should not I should try and avoid it. We should take both upfront and royalty. At least in between you can design milestone payments also, and it builds a long-term relationship, because then the risk has been shared, and product comes to market, the companies will come to you again and again for that matter. Or not just this company, there will be other people who will take this as an example. They will come to work in this model at least. And so even just taking a little bit in depth about royalty, I talked about we can fix certain royalties. Royalty, it's not the end of when we say, let's say 4% royalty. That's not the end of it. Royalty on what? We have often missed this point, that royalty on what thing we should be asking. So there are particular things that you can talk. Gross revenue. Gross revenue is the total revenue that comes to the company. Net sales is when you remove certain deductibles or returns, and then whatever comes from that, you take certain percentage. From gross revenue, the royalty will percentage will be different. From net sales, royalty percentage will be different for same technology. So you have to be a little bit cautious on which ones you want. Generally speaking, it is on net sales, so you can mostly rely on that. You can also do a tiered royalty structured. So for example, the technology is really doing good in the market, and you say that maybe after sales of 1 lakh unit, I want, because the sales is high, I'm getting more revenue. Company may ask for a reduced royalty. So they can ask for 0.5% reduction in royalty. They can do that. Or you can give them a target. If you do first 1,000 unit sales, this will be the royalty. If you do more than that, I'll take lesser royalty, because you have done more sales, which means I am getting more money. So that way also you can structure that actually encourages the company people to do more sales and return more money to you. You can also do per unit royalty, fixed royalty kind of thing. This again will depend on the technology and the cost of the technology, whether the less number of units can be sold at higher price. So those things are very subjective in this. You can also put minimum guarantee in the royalty. For example, each year at least you should pay me 10 lakh rupees in royalty. So that will give them an encouragement that they should not make sales less than what they have to meet this target. Okay, so you can do that as well. And for all of this, there are certain financial matters that has to be defined. Let's say calculation, how it will be done, what will be the deductibles, who will pay tax, for example. And usually, generally speaking, for all of these payments that comes to licensor, the tax should be paid by the licensee itself, because the person who is giving the money, your revenue should be free of tax, which means the company has already paid tax on that. If it is an international transaction, then the money currency conversion has to be kept in mind. Who will take up the cost of the currency conversion also? And you define the reporting period. You can do it in monthly basis, quarterly basis, half yearly basis, annual basis. Monthly basis could be more difficult. Quarterly, half yearly is more practical for many purposes, even for our audit purpose as well. And you put together the reporting obligation. This is one of the things, at least these two, reporting and audit rights, they go hand in hand. But these are our safeguards. We have to include it in our agreement, definitely, because without reporting obligation, we will not come to know what the company is doing, how much sales they have done, what kind of royalty we have to charge to them, what are they doing with their finances from this technology. So there are different reports that you can ask in your quarterly or annual report format. You please give us sales report, you please give us your financial report, audited P&L account for this technology, and you give a real royalty calculation also. Now they have given all of this to you, right? The reporting has been done, but how do we know it is correct or not? For that, you have to also include the clauses for audit rights. Audit rights, basically, that we will annually appoint one auditor who will check all these things, and if something is not matching, there are certain penalty that we will impose on you. Can we do that? Yes, we can do. We can certainly do that, because they have taken technology and they are doing a commercialization. We are helping them with our trust, and companies are also putting a trust on technology. So if the technology doesn't work, they are not going to give us money. At the same time, if the company is commercializing and they are making money, they should also be honest about it and pay. This is where, in the initial slides I talked about balancing the disclosure and sharing of the technology versus the commercial rights. So the trust has to be mutual from both the sides, but from the legal point of view, these clauses should be included. So just in case it didn't work out, we can point these clauses to the other party and say, see, you had to do it, and we expect you to do it because we have signed on it, right? So please take care of that also. uh, One of the most critical part is your IP licensing. Who owns, is very critical, because when we are talking about sharing our technology in the licensing form, which means we are still the owner. But what happens to the modification? What happens to the derivative works? There is some new kind of technology coming in. So there are three things that can be done in any, whatever happens, whoever is doing the modification on my technology, I can write it in the agreement that that modification, IP on that modification will come back to licensor. We can also agree that any modification that happens independently developed, or even sometimes mostly independently developed, the companies can keep it. Okay, and accordingly I will balance it in my uh, upfront payment or licensing fee. I can increase it a little bit, saying that improvements I'm giving it to you, so I need to take more money. In case both of us are working, it is ideal to have a joint ownership on the IP and give the first right of refusal to the company. my right as a joint owner, I can give you the first right of refusal. If you refuse, let's say within 3 months, I can go to some other company, give them a license, right? So this is typically how you want to structure your ownership. This takes care of the things. But what has to be structured, what has to be protected? Your patents, your technology, your inventions, your source code, your data, all of these things you can define in your intellectual property rights definition to include that these will be considered as IP, and therefore the IP ownership will flow from there. And similarly, your confidentiality, I'll not go too much into confidentiality because you will find a standard clause. Typically, different things that you can protect: your technology, IP, patents, trademarks, source code, uh, algorithms, product roadmap, application, customer data. I'm sorry for this. Pricing structure, trade secret, everything you can. I'll show you one clause also in this. What does it capture? It captures that disclosure should not happen, and if it is happening, it's only with the restricted people who has strict need to know, and it can only be permitted to do product development or commercialization for this product only. It should not happen that the technology knowledge is taken and they are doing something else uh, with the information. And this is true for all the parties involved. And once the technology this transaction is done, the information has to be either returned or it has to be destructed, right? So all those clauses should be present. There are certain exceptions. For example, if something is already available in the public, or it is that been independently developed, or those are not covered into confidentiality, or if the law permits the disclosure to happen, and there also you can ask them to inform you immediately. Okay. I already talked about this part: reporting requirement and quality control measure. One of the things that you can also do is, while you are putting the licensing agreement, you can actually define the milestones and objectives for the other parties to achieve. For example, you have given the technology. Now they need to ensure that within 6 months they have done, let's say, phase one development. Next, they have done the production. So within 1 year or 1.5 year, depending on the technology, they have the final finished product ready. So those points also you can include. You typically, these are put together in your project documents subsequent to the license agreement, but you can also link it with a milestone so that the payments and milestone achievement becomes a part of the objective as well. You can do that as well. And of course, reporting requirement I have talked about, and that helps in ensuring the consistency with which the parties are working, and there is no leakage in the revenue or the gain or benefit that has come out of the product commercialization. Then you will find some boilerplate clauses: warranty and indemnification, dispute resolution, and governing laws. These are standard clause you can include. For example, indemnification is important for the licensors, that if the product goes out in the market and because of some manufacturing defect, if a customer sues the company, that should not come back to licensor. Similarly, the licensor can give warranties that our technology will work. If it does not work, the payments will not come. If the third party the third party sues saying that you have infringed my right, now the companies, they are not the owners of IPR. In that case, we have to take the licensors have to take the warranty rights, saying that we will defend this. Okay, so technical support and all the legal support we have to also provide. In case in all of these transactions, different operations, there is a dispute, we should be ready with that. I have hardly seen disputes going to courts, at least in the cases that I have dealt. Most of the disputes you can resolve amicably through discussion. Some of that can go to mediation or arbitration. And so you have to define all these clauses, where the laws, which courts will adjudicate, who will arbitrate, which language will be used. So all those things you have to define. If it is not defined, it becomes difficult at later point in time. So the company sitting in Mumbai can drag you to the Mumbai court, and it will be, cost burden on you also. Or if you are in Chennai, and the company is somewhere else, and they have to come and go, and they will start making a lot of issues out of it. They will also, their lawyers will start also dragging it to, and will not see the end of it. So best thing is to define all of these things. But usually what happens is you actually mediate and try and resolve the issue at the first instant. Now, I'll just maybe we are at the conclusion point, so we'll just look at some of the pitfalls or issues that we face in the transaction and the licensing agreement. One is the scope and definitions are vague. This results in misunderstanding between the two parties. It's better to define everything, define the scope and boundaries clearly. So your lawyers will help in that, or the experienced persons can help in that. Computer related technologies, because the technologies are evolving very, very fast, it becomes difficult. So you have to keep broad provisions in place. We do not often have the matrices to say, um, for example, what is the parameters which will say that the product is ready, what is, how you will productize, at what point or what price you will productize. So those things are not often defined. You can link it with the milestones and define it, so that both the parties are clear what we have to do and what the other party has to do. Because once you are transferring the technology, let me go back a little bit. When your lab technology you are transferring, it should also be transferred to the company's lab in the same manner that it replicates there. From there on, the scale up can be done by them if you have not done the scale up. So those definite KPIs have to be also defined. We often, most of the time, we don't have audit rights, but that actually, because of which we suffer from revenue leakage happens, and we suffer from that. So you do all the auditing and compliance reporting mechanism within your agreement, as a practice of post deal management. And let's say technology has not moved, it was not, we could not develop it in the manner we wanted to. So the termination, how it will happen, what will happen to the IP ownership, what will happen to the payments that was done, what will happen to the payments that are due, what will happen to the information that was shared. So all of that has to be clearly put together in the agreement, what happens when these things comes to picture. You can, if you broadly, if you look into it, there are 4 5 6 different kind of checklist. One is your scope and definition. Second is your financial terms, IP ownership, performance and maintenance, how the project will move forward, risk allocations like your liabilities and indemnification, all of that, and finally the terms and termination. If among all the discussion, if you at least take care of these, if you ask questions about these, if you're clear about all these things, and you have talked to the other party about all of these things, you will be on a safer side. The negotiation part, how it is to be structured, what is to be structured, those are a little bit deeper. But if you have taken care of all of this, then you are, you are doing a good deal with the other party. So at the end, I would say, first thing itself is, when you are putting an agreement to the company, if it is well structured, all of these points that I have talked, if it is already there, you will have avoided almost 90 95% of the risk, which can be avoided just by a written paper. Technology risk is always there, market risk is always there, I'm not talking about that, but most of the risk can be avoided just because of this. Everything can be, will be very clear, and people will be serious about, taking it to the market, or will be serious about helping from the licensor side, will be helping to develop it in the manner in which the product can be commercialized. Then you put, this is one part which can be solved through agreement. The second part is your best practices, as your IP office or tech transfer office, or if you yourself are doing this, if you have certain these things in place, these are best practices. You do a regular review, you align the business with the product development, and you have audit rights, and you have regular reporting rights. So the key to take away, I would leave you with this is, It's not just the legal agreement, it's a strategic tool with which you can forge a long lasting relationship and see your technology come out in the market, generating valuable impact and revenue from it. So, with this, I will stop and I will be happy to take up any questions that we have. I hope I was able to be clear in my points,